He stood too close, his hand sliding to her booty where it had no right to be. For half a second, the world seemed to stop breathing. Her body stiffened before her mind could catch up. The room, moments ago calm and polished, suddenly felt small, like the walls were listening, like the air itself had turned heavy. His grip wasn't violent. That was what made it worse. It was casual. Confident. As if her silence had already been granted as permission. She felt the heat rush to her face, not desire, not confusion, but anger mixed with fear. Have you ever felt like staying in one place was slowly making you disappear? Not in a loud way. Not with pain you could point to. But quietly. Like every day looked the same, and every dream felt smaller than it used to. That was how her story began. She came from a town where everyone knew her name, where the roads ended quickly, and where life followed rules that had been written long before she was born. People there believed safety was the same thing as happiness. Stay close. Stay known. Stay small. But she wanted more. She wanted stories. She wanted movement. She wanted to know who she was when no one was watching. So one morning, with a bag that wasn't heavy enough for the dreams inside her, she left home. She told herself it wasn't running away. It was going toward something. The bus pulled away, and through the dusty window, she watched her old life shrink into the distance. Her heart beat fast, not with fear, but with hope. For the first time, the future felt open. Wild. Possible. She believed the world rewarded courage. She was wrong. The city welcomed her loudly. Cars screamed past like they were in a hurry to escape something. People moved fast, eyes forward, shoulders tight. No one smiled for no reason. No one stopped for anyone else. At first, it thrilled her. This was adventure. This was freedom. She walked streets she had only seen on screens. She breathed in the smell of food carts and rain on hot concrete. She felt anonymous, and to her, anonymity felt like power. No one knew her past here. No one expected anything from her. But the city had rules she didn't understand yet. And it punished ignorance quickly. It happened in a moment so small she replayed it 1,000 times later, trying to find the second where she could have changed everything. A crowded street. A light touch. A sudden emptiness in her chest. She reached for her bag. Her fingers found nothing. Money, gone. Phone, gone. ID, gone. Everything she needed to prove she existed in this world was suddenly no longer hers. She stood there, frozen, while the crowd moved around her like water around a rock. People brushed past. Someone laughed. A bus horn blared. Life went on. Hers stopped. Panic rose in her throat, thick and choking. She searched the ground, her eyes wild, as if her life might be lying there waiting to be picked up. She turned in circles, asking strangers questions she already knew the answers to. No one had seen anything. No one could help. By nightfall, reality settled in like cold rain. She had nowhere to sleep. No money to eat. No way to go home. The adventure was over. Survival had begun. The nights were the hardest. Hunger is not just pain in the stomach. It is weakness in the legs. Fog in the mind. Fear that whispers, what if this never ends? She learned how loud silence could be when you're alone among millions. She learned how quickly dignity can feel like a luxury. She learned that when people sense desperation, some step closer, but not to help. After days that blurred together, she found work the way many desperate people do, by asking until someone finally didn't say no. The kitchen was hot, loud, and unforgiving. Plates clanged. Oil sizzled. Orders were shouted, not spoken. She was given an apron, a list of rules, and a look that said she was replaceable. But it was work. She washed dishes until her hands burned. She carried trays heavier than her hope. She stood for hours until her feet stopped complaining and simply went numb. Every night, she counted her earnings slowly, carefully. She folded the money like it was fragile. This is for food. This is for tomorrow. This is for home. Going back became her only dream. Not because she had failed, but because she was tired. In that kitchen, she learned another truth. Poverty is not just about having nothing. It's about being unseen. Customers spoke over her. Some didn't look at her at all. Others looked too long, their eyes lingering in ways that made her shoulders tense. She smiled anyway. Because smiles paid better than honesty. Still, she held on to one thing. She told herself this was temporary. She would save. She would leave. She would return home wiser, quieter, but whole. Hope became smaller, but it stayed alive. Then one evening, her supervisor called her name. Not loudly. Not kindly. Just enough to make her look up. You're needed for a private service tonight. She didn't ask questions. People who ask questions don't last long in places like that. She only noticed the change when the car arrived. It was black. Silent. Too clean. The house they drove to did not feel like a home. It was large in a way that didn't feel welcoming. The lights were soft, but the air felt heavy, like secrets had weight here. She smoothed her uniform. She reminded herself this was just work. Serve. Smile. Leave. Inside, everything was expensive and cold. Even the silence felt owned. That was when she saw him. The man who spoke softly and expected obedience without asking. And beside him, a woman whose smile never reached her eyes. Something inside her tightened. A warning she didn't know how to explain. But she ignored it. Because when you have nothing, you learn to silence your instincts. As she lifted the tray, her hands steady but her heart racing, she didn't know that this moment, this simple act of serving coffee, would become the line between who she had been and who she was about to become. The road that promised freedom had led her here. And she was about to learn that not all dangers announce themselves loudly. Some wear calm voices. Some sit comfortably in power. And some wait until you believe you are finally safe. The house of power and silence. There are places that look safe because they are beautiful. And there are people who seem harmless because they are calm. She learned that lesson the hard way. The room was quiet in a way that made her uncomfortable. Not peaceful, controlled. The kind of silence that listens back when you breathe. The lights were low, warm, expensive. Every object seemed chosen to impress, not to comfort. She stood there with the tray balanced in her hands, reminding herself of the rules she had learned in the kitchen. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't ask questions. Do your job and disappear. The man sat comfortably, as if the world had been designed around him. His voice was soft, polite even. The kind of voice people trusted. The kind that never needed to be raised. Set it here, he said. She stepped forward and placed the cup down carefully, her fingers steady even though her chest felt tight. That was when she noticed his wife more clearly. She hadn't moved since she entered the room. She watched from a distance, her head tilted slightly, her lips curved into a smile that didn't feel friendly. It was slow. Curious. Like someone watching a scene they had already seen before. The air shifted. The man spoke again, casually, as if nothing in the world could disturb him. He asked simple questions, where she worked, how long she had been there. She answered briefly, respectfully. Then his tone changed. Not sharply. Not obviously. Just enough. As she stood there, unsure whether she was dismissed or expected to stay, she felt it, that moment when something crosses from normal into wrong. His presence moved closer. Too close. She froze. Her mind raced, trying to understand what was happening without wanting to believe it. This was a mistake. A misunderstanding. She had done something wrong. But deep down, she knew the truth. This wasn't confusion. It was entitlement. The kind that believes power is permission. Her body reacted before her mind could catch up. Muscles stiff. Breath shallow. The room felt smaller, tighter, like the walls were leaning in to listen. She wanted to speak. She wanted to step back. But fear has a way of stealing language. In that moment, she felt the same helplessness she had felt on the street, the same realization that being alone and powerless makes you vulnerable in ways no one prepares you for. She glanced toward the woman. Their eyes met. There was no shock there. No anger. No surprise. Only observation. That was when something inside her broke, not loudly, but completely. She understood then that this house was not safer than the streets. It was worse. Because here, the danger was protected. She doesn't remember exactly how she stepped away. Only that suddenly she was no longer in the room. Her legs carried her out on instinct, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might give her away. No one stopped her. No one called her back. She walked until the cold air hit her face and reminded her she was still alive. Outside, the night felt different than it had before. Heavier. Sharper. As if the city itself had watched and said nothing. She didn't cry immediately. Shock doesn't always come with tears. Sometimes it comes with emptiness. She sat alone later, in a place that wasn't hers, replaying everything again and again, searching for the moment where she could have changed the outcome. Did I smile too much? Did I stand too close? Did I misunderstand? Then another thought followed, quiet but firm. No. Some lines are clear, even when no words are spoken. And crossing them is a choice. That night, she didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of a city that never apologized. For the first time since leaving home, she asked herself a question she had been avoiding. What am I becoming just to survive? She had left home to find herself. Instead, she was losing pieces of herself one silent moment at a time. The next day, she went back to the kitchen. The heat felt unbearable. The noise felt cruel. Every command sounded sharper. Every look felt heavier. She worked through it anyway. Because fear doesn't pay rent. Because dignity doesn't buy food. But something had changed. She no longer dreamed of adventure. She dreamed of escape. The breaking point didn't come with drama. It came quietly. A comment that lingered too long. A look that stayed where it didn't belong. The growing understanding that her situation was not temporary, it was becoming a pattern. That was when she decided. She would leave. Not when it was comfortable. Not when she had saved enough. But now. She gathered what little she had. Folded her clothes carefully, as if order could make the chaos make sense. She counted her money, not enough, but something. For the first time in weeks, she felt clarity. Walking away meant uncertainty. Staying meant losing herself. And she had already lost too much. The journey home was quiet. No music. No excitement. Only thought. She watched the landscape change through the window, just like before, but this time, she wasn't chasing anything. She was returning. She imagined the faces she would see. The questions she would be asked. The disappointment she feared they might feel. But as the road carried her closer, something surprising happened. The shame began to loosen its grip. She realized something important. She had not failed. She had survived. Survival doesn't always look brave. Sometimes it looks like leaving quietly. Sometimes it looks like going back. Home greeted her softly. Familiar streets. Familiar air. A place that knew her before the world tried to reshape her. She didn't tell her story all at once. Some parts stayed locked inside her, waiting for time to make them easier to carry. But she stood taller than before. Not because she was unbroken, but because she knew her limits now. She understood that freedom without safety is not freedom at all. That power does not always announce itself loudly. And that walking away can be the strongest decision a person makes. She had left home searching for adventure. She returned with wisdom. And though the world had taken much from her, it had not taken the one thing that mattered most. Her ability to choose herself. So if you're listening to this and standing at the edge of a decision, if you feel restless, unseen, or tempted by a road that promises everything, remember this. There is courage in leaving. But there is also courage in knowing when to return. And sometimes, finding yourself doesn't mean going farther. It means coming back whole. The truth no one expected. People expected her to come back triumphant. They expected stories of success, of city lights, of dreams conquered. They expected her to say, it was worth it. But she didn't. She came back quieter. Not defeated, just honest. When they asked why she returned so soon, she smiled and said, I learned what I needed to learn. They never knew how close she came to losing herself. They never knew how power tried to silence her. They never knew how many nights she begged the dark to let her remain whole. And maybe that was okay. Because healing doesn't always need witnesses. What broke her heart the most wasn't the theft on the streets, or the cruelty hidden behind wealth. It was the realization that the world she ran toward was never built to protect her. But what surprised her, what even she didn't expect, was this. She didn't come back weaker. She came back awake. She learned that adventure without preparation is danger. That desperation invites wolves dressed as saviors. And that sometimes, the bravest thing a woman can do is walk away before the world convinces her she deserves less. Her dreams didn't die. They changed. They became quieter, wiser, rooted in self-respect instead of escape. And though her heart carried scars, it also carried something stronger than hope. Discernment. So if you thought this story would end with riches, revenge, or rescue, it doesn't. It ends with a woman choosing herself. It ends with her saying, I am enough to protect me. And that is the ending no one expects. But everyone needs to hear.